Welcome to tonight's live stream. I am going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know that the stream is getting ready to start. Sorry I was a little late, but I had other stuff to do and time got ahead of me. So just need a minute to adjust this tie and get myself together, and I will be ready to get started and get into tonight's topic. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to go over to the social media and let everybody know that the show is getting ready to go on. Okay, what's going on, computer robots? What's going on, Gordon Freeman? And with all of that taken care of as related to promotion on social media, I'm gonna get into a little quick perfunctory. Now, I have all of the books of the 2021 catalog on the SJS Direct Reaper available in paperback, and those include John Haynes' Taking Care of Business, ISIS Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, and Eastern Calcification. And all three of these books are great reading for young readers and readers of all ages. And you can find these in paperback on Amazon.com right now. So these will make great gifts for your kids and great gifts for the fantasy fan in your family. And they also again are just great fun books. So I'm asking everybody to head over to Amazon and pick up some of these great books for your family and your friends. They make great gifts and they help your kids really get excited about reading, because a lot of people tell me that their kids love these books, and I think your kids will love them too. And in addition to those three books, I also have Stop Simping in Cyberspace, which is the latest book in the Simp series. And you can find this book on Amazon.com as well as Google Play. And this book will teach you how to avoid online female predators such as e-girls and Instagram models, and avoid their traps that get you taken advantage of and have you exploited for your cash. Now, I'm going to give another quick progress report on the John Haynes Death Store comic, and I got page 24 from Antonio Balderi this week, and the action on that page is incredibly intense. With each passing page that Antonio does, I become more excited for this comic, and I can't wait to share it with you later on next year in the Kickstarter. And I hope to be able to get that comic out sooner rather than later. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Now, with all of that perfunctory taken care of, I'm going to get into tonight's topic. And tonight's topic was inspired by a meme I saw online and a discussion I had with gboot2786 on his show last night, where I was doing a guest appearance. And you can sub over to his channel and check out the live stream I did with him last night. So I'm going to leave a link to G-Boot's channel so you can check out his channel. You can sub his channel, where you can catch me on Thursday nights. Glad to see you here, Soul Survivor. And you can check out that conversation that we had. And the meme I saw online talked about how the Good Times character, Florida Evans, oftentimes hindered the progress of her husband, James, in his effort to get his family out of the ghetto. And as I saw that meme online, it really made me think about one of the things that impedes our sisters, and that is fear. Now, when it comes down to your American Black woman, one of the things that has her at odds with the American Black man is the fear that is in her heart. And it's this fear that prevents her from being able to have a healthy relationship with her husband. And it's this fear that prevents her from being able to move her life forward. And like Florida Evans, instead of being a helpmeet to a man in helping him make progress, what happens is, because of the fear in your Black woman's heart, what happens is she winds up impeding the progress of her husband and the men in her life, such as her sons. And what happens because of this fear, it makes it where no man can really work with her, because she is so afraid of doing anything like taking a risk that nobody can actually grow in her presence. So this fear is one of the things that leads to a divide between your Black man and your Black woman, and prevents them from being able to come together to do God's work. Now, the roots of this fear start back in slavery, and their foundations start with the experiences many Black women experienced on the slave plantation. Now, the foundation of that fear starts with the Black woman seeing the man who God made to be her leader, the man who she was made to be her protector, being broken down and humiliated by these white men. And as she saw these white men go out here and do things like the buck breaking process, where they practically take a Black man who was the strongest and beat him and whip him and break him down, and then in some cases even sodomize that man, what that does is it instills fear in the Black woman's mind and makes it where she is afraid to trust the leadership of a Black man and trust the ability of a Black man to be any sort of protector or any sort of provider, because he could not even be able to protect himself or be able to provide for himself. So that's one of the things that leads to your American Black woman being filled with fear. The other was seeing many of these strong Black male slaves winding up being murdered and lynched over the centuries that slavery went on. So after the whole emancipation of slavery, a lot of Black women saw their husbands being lynched and murdered, and that also exacerbated the fear many Black women had, because again, they could not trust the Black man that they were supposed to be following to be any sort of leader or be any sort of provider, because every time he went out into the world, what happened was something traumatic happened, and she could not trust him to be any sort of leader. Now, as this black man was being either broken or practically murdered, what your black female learned over the years was that the white power structure was the only institution she could trust. And as she saw the white institution having all the power and the white institution being more economically and more socially secure, she began to invest into that institution. And as she invested into that institution, she began learning that this was the culture that she needed to follow. Now, one of the great ironies as related to your American black woman is that many of your American black women say that they are Christians. And many of these American black women who say that they are Christians say that we need to trust in the Most High living God. But when we look at their behavior and the fear that they have, we see that they don't trust in the Most High living God. No, they trust in the white system, and they trust, and that's shown in the actions that they have. So they'll sit there and say, oh, I'm a Christian and I trust in God, like your Florida Evans said on many episodes of Good Times, where she has a picture of the white Jesus on her wall. But we see that the God that she really serves was that white man. And that was shown again because every time your James Evans decided to develop a plan to move out of the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago, your Florida was the first one to speak against going out and helping with that venture. So instead of being a helpmeet to the man that she married, she became a hindrance to her husband, and she became a hindrance to her husband because she was filled with fear and did not have faith in her husband to be the leader and make good decisions that benefited the family. So your Florida Evans was one of these black women who had been conditioned over time to believe in being afraid. And it was that fear that was the thing that prevented the Evans family from moving their lives forward. Now, your American black woman, just like Florida Evans, is filled with this fear. And it is this fear that is the main reason why she has such a hard time being able to have relationships with black men. And this is something I talk about in depth in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. And one of the main reasons why your black woman remains single in large numbers is basically this fear. You can get this book on Amazon in paperback or Kindle format. But the reason why they are single is because they have the fear inside of them. And this fear is something that they have been taught from day one. Most of your American black women have been taught to be afraid to go out into the world. And because they are afraid to go out into the world, they are afraid to have any sort of faith in God. So they are looking for security, and the institution of the state provides the greatest security. And this is why your American black woman would rather hold on to the institution of the state because she feels safe there. But as she holds onto that institution of the state, it prevents her from being able to live an abundant life under the Most High living God. Now, the Most High living God has an abundant life he wants to share with the black woman, but she doesn't want to be a part of God's natural order. Now, Darius from Atlanta makes a good point. Florida Evans was afraid of money, and most black women are afraid of not having enough money because they are afraid that of being economically insecure. And again, it's that fear of being economically insecure that weds most of your black women to the state and makes it where they never leave places like the inner city because they want to remain economically secure, getting crumbs from the master's table instead of going out here and building up the infrastructure to make their own bread. And the reason why they want to continue getting the bread from the master's table is because they don't trust in the Lord altogether. Now, God himself said, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of the living God. And the word of the living God is more powerful than the bread of the white man, but you cannot explain that to your American black woman because your American black woman, she is seeing the bread in front of her that is tangible, but does not have faith in the Most High and his word to provide bread for her as related to everything. Now, again, it's this lack of faith that is the core foundation for her inability to be able to have that abundant life because she is looking to be that helpmeet to white supremacy, and it's being that helpmeet to white supremacy that makes her a hindrance to her black man, because the black man was the steward that God gave to her to be the head. But in order for her to have that relationship with that steward, she has to go out here and have the faith to trust him, to be able to do the work that God has established for him, and have the faith to trust in that man to be able to go out here and provide for both of them. Thank you, Darius from Atlanta, for the super chat. I wanted to do this topic because it was one that I was inspired by that meme in GB2786, and it was one that I thought many of the sisters and the brothers could get educated on, because many black women don't see how their fear is the one thing that's holding them back, and this fear of not being able to trust a man. This is one of the things that keeps them from being able to live that abundant life under the Most High. Because the Most High, again, he wants to give the black woman this abundant life, but because she has this fear prevents her from having the faith to go out here and trust a man to be able to do what needs to be done. Because a man, in order for that man to be able to go out here and do his work, he needs to work with his helpmeet. But it's hard to work with a helpmeet when the helpmeet wants to go out here and undermine the authority of man and undermine his ability to go out here and be able to do whatever God tells the man to do. Now, this fear that the black woman has, it starts out, again, something that she's been taught over the last couple of centuries or so. And this fear is something that she believes is something that she needs to go out here and have, because she's afraid that her husband or her son will eventually wind up dead at the hands of these white racists or some of these other non-blacks out here. And because she's afraid that something bad will happen to her husband or her son, that seed shows the seeds of doubt in her mind. And it's this doubt that she has in her mind that prevents her from being able to believe in the black men in her community, because she's going by sight and not by faith. So she's out here going by sight at everything that she sees as related to what's going on in her community, and not having the faith in the decent brothers to go out here and do what needs to be done. Now, this fear that, again, that was taught to both the black man and the black woman at an early age, this fear is something that they learn over time because the mother is, as the first teacher, teaches them fear, and that fear prevents your black man and your black woman from being able to develop the confidence that they need to be able to say that, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can accomplish something. Yes, I can go out here and do this. And that's something that many young black boys and young black girls don't get because they learn about fear, and they learn, when you learn a foundation in fear, it makes it where you don't have the courage to go out here and persevere or follow through as related to adversity. Because a lot of boys and girls who come from single mother households, they learn fear from their mothers, and that fear is the thing that prevents them from being able to take that next step to move forward. Once they get a little bit of conflict or a little bit of resistance, that's the thing that makes them quit. And that's one of the things that really undermines the black community as related to our children, because they learn that fear, and that fear is the thing that makes them give up and stop. And again, this is encouraged by American black women in large numbers, and I'm not generalizing. I just noticed that pattern. And again, that fear is the thing that prevents our brothers and sisters from being able to grow. Now, this fear of being secure, this is again the thing that prevents many black women from having good relationships with them, with a man, or even with their children. And I'm going to start by talking about how the relationships deteriorate between a woman, black woman, and her man. Now, the man, again, God has established the man as the head. He's established the man as a steward in his order, and the woman is supposed to be able to follow the man. But a lot of black women fear following a black man because they fear that he will not be able to go out here and take care of her needs. Now, your black man out here, he wants to go out here and be that leader. He wants to be that steward. Unfortunately, in our system of white supremacy, the black man has to go out here and he has to deal with racists who always try to undermine him by doing things like denying him a job in the job market, or going out here and getting him fired, basically based on him not having the ability to get a everything bagel from the bagel shop, or his favorite cup of coffee from a Dunkin' Donuts. And it's all of these types of behaviors that instill fear in the black woman that the black man will not be able to provide for her. And because she sees this black man having to deal with struggles, she doesn't have the faith in God to be able to make a way for both of them the way he did for many of his servants. And again, it's this fear that she has that makes it where the man cannot go out here and have a relationship where he can connect with the black woman, because it's that fear of him being able to lead and being able to take care of his family. That is the thing that creates what I call an emotional wall between herself and the black man. And it's this emotional wall that prevents the black woman from being able to get close to the man. Because many black women, I believe, they want to get closer to the black man and bond with the black man, but they fear that if they go out here and commit to trusting that black man, what will happen is this black man will not be able to do what he says. And since he cannot do what he says, what happens is this makes it where she's always looking over at the white system and looking for the white system to be able to be her safety net. So instead of her having faith in God to provide for her with that black man, what she does is she's always looking over at the white system and looking for the white system to be that cushion that she could fall on, instead of trusting in the most high living God to be able to provide for both of them, because both the man and the woman are supposed to look for God to provide for them. But because your black woman has this doubt about her economic security, what she does is she looks for the white man and the white system to provide for her. And that's why she will look for the white man's job or the white man's businesses and put them ahead of her husband. And she will look to submit to those authorities because she wants that economic security and she wants to feel safe economically. Unfortunately, this is the thing that prevents her from being able to have that close relationship with her husband and be able to bond with him mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's all because she keeps looking over her shoulder for some white person to be able to validate the everything in her life. And as she's looking for this white person to validate everything and make it secure, that prevents her from being able to actualize any sort of potential for the relationship. And that's one of the things that prevents her from being able to have that bond with her boyfriend and turn that into a marriage, because the man wants to get closer to the black woman, but it's that fear that prevents her from being able to make that final step forward. Because in order for a relationship to actualize, a woman has to have faith in her man. And in order for that relationship to move forward, she has to have that faith in that this man will do right by her. But your black woman, again, she does not trust in the black man because she does not trust in the Most High God. And because she does not trust in the Most High God and have faith in that man, it's the fears that turn into the insecurities. And it is the insecurities that make it where she has a next to impossible chance of being able to move her relationships forward. So this starts to lay a foundation of mistrust because she has these insecurities about the man in her life and these insecurities she has about the man in her life. What this does is it makes it where every effort that this man makes to go out here and try to build anything, she's looking to go out here and look to tear everything down because she is so afraid that of standing on her own, and she's afraid of trusting in the man as they are standing on her own. And again, that is due to the fear that she has that if they stand on her own, that this man will not be there to be able to provide for her. So she fears that this man will not be able to meet her needs. So it's that fear that prevents her from being able to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to trust the man that God gave me to provide for me. I'm going to trust the man that God meant to meet my needs. And then she doesn't trust this man. So he cannot go out here and work towards building because every time he tries to build, what happens is she starts to have all of this doubt. She starts to second guess him. And in the most extreme cases, she starts trying to work against him. So instead of helping him do whatever God wants them to do as part of his work, she has all of this doubt in her mind. And with all of that doubt in her mind, she's always looking over her shoulder the way Lot's wife did at places like your Sodom and Gomorrah, and looking over there, looking to see what's over there, instead of looking forward with her husband. So she's looking over at the other side, and she's looking at this other stuff that's just filled with sin, and looking at things like the security of the welfare state. It's looking at some of these jobs out here and not trusting in God's leader and God's steward. No, she's looking over at these so-called secure things, but these so-called secure institutions take this black woman away from God. And it takes the black woman away from God because instead of her having faith as her foundation, what she has is fear. And while she goes to church every Sunday, she is not really committed the way she's supposed to because she's still filled with this fear. And it is this fear that goes out here and makes it where she's sitting there looking for others to trust in, but won't look to trust in the man that God has given her, her husband, to do what needs to be done. So she's looking for the job to do, provide for her. She's looking for the welfare to provide for her. She's even looking for the black pastor for spiritual and emotional support. And again, all due to the fear she has of trusting the man that she has gotten involved with. And it is this fear that makes it where she's looking to others instead of trusting in who God made to provide for her. And again, God wants to give the black woman that abundant life, but that abundant life comes through faith. And faith is something that is not something done by sight. No, faith is something done when you trust in the Most High. And yes, it can be a major challenge to trust in the Most High because you don't really see everything, and not everything is guaranteed. But oftentimes, the Most High knows better than you, and the Most High knows what you need. And while you are looking at that other side of the street, thinking that things are more secure over there, things are not as secure as many would think. Because again, the man wants to go out here and give the black woman things out of love, but she's going to try to get security and try to work for things. But those people who you're working for, they don't really have any respect for the black woman, just like the slave master had no respect for the black woman. And all they see the black woman is as a utility tool to go out here and use to be able to do their work. And then after they get them to do their work, they then go out here and discard the black woman. So they don't respect the black woman. They don't regard the black woman. And they just use the black woman as a tool. And again, they are using her out of the fear that she has learned. And as she has learned this fear, what happens to the black woman is instead of her trusting in God for her daily bread, she is trusting into the white man, and she's trusting in the government system. And the government system, yes, they will give the black woman crumbs from the slave master's table, but then she misses out on the bread of the Most High, and the bread of the Most High is more filling and full, spiritually fulfilling. And you know that when everything you get from God, it will be good. But your black woman, she has been taught everything from this false God is good. And when she's been taught this, again, this is a mindset that is hard to break because the fear that she has, this is the thing that impedes her ability to make progress in the world. And it makes it where she winds up not stuck in only a physical ghetto, but also a psychological ghetto. So your black woman, she winds up getting stuck in a psychological ghetto because she has learned to be afraid. And it's this fear that makes it where she cannot go out here and do what she needs to do because she's always looking over her shoulder at this system. She's always looking to somebody else. And many women, they wind up out here like this because they don't get taught about having faith. They don't get taught about building trust. And they're not taught how to go out here and have that faith in the man to go out here and be that leader. No, they always want to second guess him. And then they want to go out here and do things behind his back. And it's doing things behind the man's back that winds up making it where the man starts to become discouraged. And once he starts to become discouraged, he himself will start to have a crisis of faith. Now, many men, black men out here, they as related to spiritual, they need a helpmeet, because the helpmeet, in many cases, she can be the person who can go out here and inspire that man to go out here and do better and be better and persevere. But it's hard to do that when you're the woman who is supposed to be your helpmeet. It has all of this fear, and because she has this fear, doubts everything that you do. And that's what happened on the show Good Times with James Evans. Every time he thought about doing a business venture, every time he thought about going out here and trying to find another job or try to do something, he always ran into this resistance from Florida. And it was that doubt that made it where he would go out here and want to do things like give up. And that's something a guy does, because he does not have that woman who goes out here and stands by him. Because sometimes just sitting there and saying you believe in your man, again, that can be the thing that encourages him to persevere. But if he feels like he has no support system, it can make that man practically feel alone. And that is something that many black women don't understand about the fear that they have. It winds up undermining them, and it also winds up making it where their relationships start to deteriorate. Because when a man does not have a woman who goes out here and has the faith to trust in him or the faith to encourage him, then it's harder for him to have a relationship with that woman, because she is becoming more and more distant from him. And she's becoming distant because he cannot go out here and form the trust that he needs to have with her. He cannot make the connection, because as he's trying to reach to make that connection to the woman in his life, she's pulling away, and she's looking at that grass on the other side of white supremacy. And as she's looking at that grass on the other side of white supremacy, I see it as her committing adultery in her heart. And again, I believe it's adultery in her heart because she's looking over at that system and looking for the security of that system and looking for the security of that white man's system. And she's looking for that security because it's supposedly guaranteed. But what happens is she winds up in a place where her fear keeps her off a road of God's order and keeps her from a road of spiritual growth and a road of the abundant life. So she's sitting there looking at that system and looking at the material security, but she misses out on the spiritual growth she could have had. So that fear, yes, she winds up with her belly full with food from the food stamps or food from the corporate job, and she's well taken care of, but she's spiritually empty. And again, spiritually empty because she's not in God's order. And because she's not a part of God's order, she's out here all by herself. And again, that's all due to the fear that she has learned. And it is this fear that makes it where she cannot have that fulfilling relationship. And you'll see all of these black women talking about how they're looking to get a man, but they cannot find a relationship because their fears wind up being the thing that undermine them. And it's these fears that make it where they cannot get closer to that man. And it's those fears that this man may possibly not be there that wind up being the thing that keep them from being close to a good man. Now, some of these fears that your black women learn, they come from previous failed relationships with guys who are not spiritually right. Now, many of your black women, they will sit there and have relationships with your guys like your Pookies or your Ray Rays or some other smooth talking guy when they're young. And it's that failure of that relationship that leads to them not being able to go out here and be able to have another relationship with another man. So yes, they will have that relationship and it will go sour. And what will happen is that trauma from that failed relationship, what that will do is that will lead to the woman not being able to connect with another man emotionally. And what will happen is because she can't connect with another man emotionally, she cannot ever really get close to that man because she's always looking at this pattern and looking for when the next shoe is going to drop and when she's going to get hurt. So your black woman will sit there always thinking about this man who did them wrong in the past, and that will keep them from being able to have a future with a decent man. So the decent man may show up after the so-called player or the so-called jerk, and this man may be looking to go out here and build with this woman, but he winds up in a situation where he cannot build with this woman because she's so afraid of investing anything in him that he cannot go out here and lay any sort of foundation for anything. So a guy who's a decent guy, he'll be out here looking to go out here and build a nice house. He may even go out here and get the house for the woman, but because she has fear that this man may run away because of a previous failure with another man, she will never have the faith to step into that man's house and be a part of the family he's trying to build. Or this man may possibly be ready to go and get married to this woman, but she will turn down the wedding ring because she's afraid of committing to that man. And again, it's that fear that she has that makes it where she can't go out here and make that next step. And because you have people like your pastors and your feminists, they go out here and enable the black woman's dysfunction instead of helping her overcome this fear that she has. Because it's this fear, again, that makes it where she becomes unable to move anything forward. And because she's so afraid of moving anything forward, what happens is she misses out on the love of her life. She misses out on God's blessings, and she misses out on everything that God has had for her. Now, a book I wrote about the fear that black women have was the book Spinsterella. And in that book, I talked about how the Matilda Crowley character had to deal with her fears because those fears were keeping her from a relationship with the quiet man. Now, this man was there, and he had been there for almost a year. And while she felt instinctively a connection to this man, it was her fears that kept her from having that relationship. But once she faced her fears, she was able to have a great relationship. And many black people, especially black women, they don't understand that fears are keeping them from that relationship. So they're sitting there thinking, oh, this guy will be like the other guy or be like the next guy. And then because they have all this fear and doubt of having a good relationship with another man, they miss out on that opportunity, and the opportunity passes them by because God has that man for them, but they're too afraid to go out here and take that next step. And them having that fear of taking that next step is the thing that leads to them winding up alone for many, many years and especially the best years of their life. Because many black women, after being burnt by the Pookie or the Ray Ray or whatever guy is out here, they wind up not being able to trust any other man because they're still feeling these emotional hurts from these guys. And it's this fear of this guy hurting them is the thing that makes it where they don't have the ability to trust in that man and be able to form that ability to bond with that man. But the man is there and he's willing to bond, he's willing to connect, and he wants to be there. But the woman doesn't want to be there because she's scared, and she's scared that this guy is just gonna run away. And again, guys don't run away. A lot of decent men don't want to run away, and they want to be out here and be husbands. They want to go out here and build, but it's hard to build when you have a woman who, again, is filled with fear, second guesses you, and goes out here and wants to try to be the boss over you And again, that trying to be the boss over you is basically insecurity. And it's insecurity because the woman does not trust in God and does not trust in God, the man God has made her steward to go out here and be the leader he established and do the work that he needs done. No, they trust more in the system than the man. And that is why some black men, even though they go out here and persevere and try to push and try to break down that wall and try to connect with that woman, eventually wind up giving up. And they wind up giving up primarily because they see that this woman just, you cannot get her to trust and trust you emotionally. And because she's been emotionally hurt, it makes it where he cannot get past that wall. And eventually he just winds up giving up and he just winds up trying to go on with his life. And it's one of those things that guys have, they don't want to do, but they wind up doing it because they realize that they're, for all the time that they can invest in this woman, that there's no way to get her to get past her fear. And again, because she's so afraid, this makes it where the man just cannot work with her. And if a man cannot get a woman to work with him, he cannot go out here and have a relationship with her because she won't work past this fear. And if you can't work past that fear, you can't really work with that man. And that's why many black women wind up alone, because he's trying to work with you, but you're working against him. And when you work against him, he winds up realizing that it's just a lost cause. Now, this fear that your black woman has also does not impact her relationship with just her boyfriends or her husbands. It also impacts her children. And the fear that she has winds up teaching her children a culture of fear, because as the first teacher, the first thing that she teaches her children is to be afraid. And they teach their children to be afraid of everything. And that's one of the things that children learn at an early age. They learn to be not afraid of the white man. They learn to be afraid of the guy down the street. They learn to be afraid of the next door neighbor. They learn to be afraid of everyone. And learning this fear, this is one of the reasons why many of your black males grow up to become cowards, because they learn to just be afraid of everybody. And as they're learning to be afraid of everybody, they don't have the courage to go out here and do things that are extremely risky. So many mothers, they're sitting there teaching their sons and teaching them just to go out here and be afraid. And whenever an opportunity in life comes by, what happens is that boy doesn't take that risk because he's trying to be safe. So many of your boys, instead of them learning, hey, here's an opportunity for me to move ahead, they instead back down at that opportunity, and they run, and they avoid going for that opportunity. And that's something your boys learn at an early age. They learn to just be afraid, and that's not a thing you want to instill in a boy. Hey, Gabriel, glad to see you here. I'm talking about the Florida Evans and the fear that black women have learned and teach. And it's something that I felt was a topic that really needed to be discussed, because this fear, again, it's one of those things that black women have learned over the centuries, and it's become a way of life for many black women. And while many black women learn this fear because we have to deal with things like racism and white supremacy, we also have to learn how to overcome that fear, because the only way you're going to be able to move forward is by having faith in the Most High God to be able to do what needs to be done. Because in order for you to do God's work on earth, you have to have faith. You can't have fear. And that's something we have to start teaching our young sisters how to understand, that the only way to move forward is through faith, not fear. And fear, if you teach your children fear at an early age, it's going to prevent them from being able to actualize their potential. So a lot of black boys, they learn to become cowards at an early age, and they learn this cowardice from their mothers because they see their mother trusting in the system. They see their mother trusting in jobs. They see their mother trusting in men that are no good, and they don't see their mothers trusting in God. Yes, some black women, they will even go to church, but you won't see any application of faith. And because you don't see application of faith, what we see is young black boys learning how to be afraid and learning how to trust in things like the dope dealers or the gangbangers instead of having the faith to go out here and stand up and be a man who follows the Most High. So instead of that boy learning to trust in the Most High, he learns how to be afraid and learns how to be this coward who goes out here and go out here and be and just trust in other people instead of trusting in God. And instead of him stepping out on faith, he just learns how to just go for whatever is safe. And that makes it where instead of him taking risks that would help him grow, he goes out here and plays it constantly safe because he's learned to become afraid of the white man. He's learned to become afraid of the gangbangers. He's learned to become afraid of the dope dealers. He's learned to become afraid of everyone. But you can't be afraid of any of these people because the more you are afraid of them, the more power you give them. And God has already given you power and a victory over these types of people and these spirits and principalities of darkness that control them. And the abundant life is waiting for you if you have the faith to go out here and persevere. Thank you, Curtis, for the Cash App. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad you're enjoying Eternal Night. He says he's purchased a copy of Eternal Night, my vampire novel that I came out with last year. And if you want to go out here and pick up that vampire novel, Eternal Night, you can pick up that novel on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get Eternal Night and read it for free. So I'll leave a link to Eternal Night in the chat so you guys can pick up your own copy. But I'm going to get back to this topic because black boys, again, they learn this fear from their mothers, and this fear, it makes it where instead of them looking to go out here and persevere in life, they just learn how to become afraid of everybody and give other people power over them. People who basically, if you really look at it, they are weaker than you, and they're weaker because they are like the single mother, insecure, and they need to use things like weapons in order to have power, and they need to go out here and threaten people in order to have power because they are afraid of somebody taking power over themselves. Because the Most High gives you power, again, over yourself, and he gives you the power over these types of spiritualities and principalities of darkness, and you can overcome all of these beings if you go out here and persevere and trust in him. So, oh, happy birthday, Computer Robots. I know it's coming in 5 minutes, so I want to wish you a happy birthday. And he's one of my regular viewers. He watches me on G-Boot stream or any stream and watches many of my videos, so I definitely want to wish Computer Robots a happy birthday. And I'm going to get back into tonight's topic because, again, the fear that your black woman teaches her sons, again, it does not help it with him be able to go out here and persevere and be able to go out here and do what needs to be done. So instead of him having the faith to go out here across the country as related to whatever scholarship he would have, or have the courage to go out here and take that risk, he goes out here and plays it safe. And the abundant life, again, is going to allow you to have it where you have to take a risk because that's faith. And the only way to get risks and to achieve rewards in life is to go out here and take risks. And that's something fathers teach their sons about life, that everything worth is you're going to have to take a risk to get a reward. And the only way you're going to be able to grow is to take those risks in life. But many women, they want their boys to be secure and they want their boys to be safe. But when you make the boy too afraid to go out here and live life, what happens is you have a grown son who is sitting in his mother's house and not going out here and doing anything. So the fear a mother has an impact on her son long term, because it teaches the boy that he needs to just stay in the house around her. And when he's in that house around her, what that does is it makes it where that boy never learns how to go out here and grow to become his own man. What he does is he goes out here and becomes this guy who's just in the neighborhood, who's been just sitting in his room at his mother's house for years, and he never goes out here and achieves or accomplishes anything because he's too scared to go out here. And when you have large groups of these kinds of males, what happens is when they get into places like jobs and businesses, they don't go out here and have the faith to step out on anything or take any sort of risk. It's like my live stream last week where I talked about how your boomers in Hollywood, they're just so afraid of taking any sort of risk. And again, that's a fear that they learned in the homes where they were living with their mothers. So you have boys, again, they learn this fear, and it makes it where they are not able to go out here and achieve what God wants them to achieve or actualize their potential. And it makes it where he's just sitting in your house for 10, 20, and even 30 years. And as he's sitting in that house, he's not doing anything or accomplishing anything. In fact, all he's doing is sitting there waiting to get up at 6 a.m. to go stand outside the Arab store. And while the Arab man is going out here making money at his store and talking about the house he's going out here to buy, the private schools he's sending his kids to, you're still sitting there talking about PlayStation and living in a state of arrested development. And that's how this male that she has in her home, because of fear, as Sean Cameron points out, makes the son a codependent. And what's really sad about some of these codependent males is if they do leave the house, they go from their mother's house to their girlfriend's house. And because they don't have a mindset of faith instilled in them, they are filled with fear. And it is that fear that makes it where he goes from sitting on his mother's sofa to sitting on his girlfriend's sofa. And that frustrates the girlfriend because she's looking for a helpmeet to turn their household into a family, and she's looking to become a wife. So she becomes frustrated because she wants to have that closeness, that intimacy with a husband, but because this man has been taught fear, he doesn't have the courage to step out and become that man who would become God's steward and God's head and go out here to have the faith to stand up and be the man that God made him to be. So that's what happens when you have a culture of fear. That culture of fear prevents people from growing spiritually in God. That culture of fear prevents people from growing together and becoming husbands and wives. And that culture of fear prevents Black women from being able to have that spiritual and emotional fulfillment in a relationship with a man and be a part of God's natural order and do God's work on earth. And as she teaches this culture of fear to her sons and her daughters, it leads to them perpetuating a vicious cycle of fear that prevents them from being able to achieve the abundant life that God has established for Black people. God, again, has the very best for Black people, but we have to face our fears as related to this institution of white supremacy, and we have to face our fears of things in your life going bad. And again, that fear is the thing that holds us back as a people, and it's that fear that prevents us from being able to move forward as a race and as a collective. Because, as the old African proverb states, a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women. And as the woman goes, so goes the race. But when your women have a position filled with fear, they are afraid to go anywhere. And because they're afraid to go anywhere, what they do is get in the way of any black man who is trying to move things forward. So you'll have a black man out here looking to move things forward, but because she's so scared of this black man going out here and doing something that will, as she believes, go bad, what will happen is she will look to get in the way. Because many black women, because they're afraid of change, what they do is they will try to sabotage a black man who is looking to make progress, because she fears that this black man will abandon his position of power and not take responsibility the way a man is supposed to take it. So, because she fears that that black man will go out here and betray her, she goes and betrays him first. And this is why some black women out here, not all, will go out here and try to get a black man fired off his job, because she fears that him being here will change dynamics, and she won't be the one to go out here and bootlick this white man. And she fears that if this black man stands on his own 2 feet, it will change the dynamics on the job, where people, instead of them looking to be codependent, will become interdependent. So that's why some black women will work towards getting a man fired off the job, because she fears having to deal with him. She fears having to compete with him. She fears having to be in a place where this man is going to be in a place where he's going to demand better, and he's going to insist on setting boundaries. So some black women, they fear that if a black man comes into the workplace, he is going to be able to demand different things. So she wants to get that black man fired, because she fears that she won't be the H nice, and she fears she won't be the center of attention. So it's that fear that she has that makes it where she's looking to destroy all of those black men on the job, and looking to erect a wall, which I call the HR brick wall, that keeps the black man out of the workplace. And she's looking to be this gatekeeper over that workplace, because she fears that if these black men come into the workplace, those black men are going to change that workplace and demand better for themselves. Now, and those black men are going to demand a better standard for everyone. That's what she fears, and that's why your racists like to hire many of these types of bootlick black women, because they're afraid they will be the gatekeepers that keep black people under the white supremacist control. And that's all, again, due to the fear that the black woman has learned from birth over the last 400 years, and conditioned over the last 400 years in a system of white supremacy. And because she has learned this fear, it makes it where it becomes difficult for black men and black children to be able to take those steps to make progress. So your black American man, your black American woman, they don't really understand the dynamics of fear. But when I saw that meme on Facebook, it all came to me as an understanding of why so many black people have a hard time making progress, because this fear that black women have, it really makes it where you can't not really move the way you want to move, and you really want to go out here and do things, and people, they don't understand, they don't, because they're scared of change. They start coming up with all sorts of ideas. Oh, he's going to go do this, and he's going to go be a certain way, not understanding that that black man, in many cases, or your black children, they're trying to make those steps to move forward, but they can't move forward because you have people who are just so afraid because they want to stay in that secure place. But that security comes at a price. And that security, when you get that security, it comes at the price of you being of your emotional peace, of your spiritual peace, and it comes at the cost of all of your joy and all of these other things. So you're just sitting there being miserable. Yes, you're secure, but you're emotionally miserable. You're mentally drained, and you're just in a really bad place overall. And you can't, and many black women, they don't understand this. They're sitting there thinking, oh, why is my life not working? Why are things not working out? Well, things aren't working out because you are afraid, and your fear is the thing that holding you back. And the only thing about fear is that the reason why it holds you back is because you become your own worst enemy, and you become your own worst enemy because you are afraid to go out here and step out and have that courage to be the person that you want to be. So instead of you being having the courage to go out here and accomplish what you want to accomplish, do what you want to do, you're always having these doubts, and you're always second guessing things. And this is the thing that holds you back from achieving things and having things. And you're sitting there saying, I'm dissatisfied. Well, you're dissatisfied because you don't want to face these fears that you have, and you have to face those fears if you want to do things in life. I mean, you have to go out here and face all of those fears if you want something positive. And that's something I've been trying to do again for the last 30 years, because I learned how to be afraid from being in toxic places like junior high schools and high schools. And over this course of this pandemic, I've really come to understand the whole concept of fear, because the concept of fear is what I'm seeing this pandemic turning more and more into. And fear, it can make you do things that you never thought you'd be capable of doing. I mean, fear can make it where you just wind up becoming an enemy and betraying people, and you go out here and turn on those who are trying to help you, and you go out here and support those who are trying to destroy you, all because you want a little bit of security. But there's nothing guaranteed and secure about man, because man is naturally evil. No, the only way to find security is through Jesus Christ, the Most High, or some call Yah. And he is the one who guarantees security. And in his security, you are going to get the true freedom. So everybody, they think, oh, I'm going to go out here and get the security from man. You can never get security from an evil man who was born in sin. And a man born in sin, he's always going to be filled with fear, because unless God puts his spirit into that man does not have any faith in the Most High to provide for him. And because he has no faith, that's why he needs fear to control others. That's why he needs fear to get power over others. That's why he needs fear to keep people down, because he fears having to deal with their competition, and he fears those people taking power. So what he does is he wants to instill fear in people, and that's why many black women right now are a mess, because they have been instilled with fear. And as they have been instilled with this fear, it is the thing that keeps many black communities from actualizing their potential and becoming as prosperous as the suburbs. Again, the ghetto that we see is a creation of fear, and it was a creation of fear because the black woman feared trusting the black man during the 1960s and the 1970s, and sided with the white feminist movement and the welfare state, looking for that security out of fear. And because she was looking for that security out of fear, she wound up going to live in the security of a ghetto. And as she lived in that security of that ghetto, she wound up in a neighborhood that went nowhere, because she was only getting crumbs from the table instead of learning how to make her own bread, because she didn't trust in the man that the Most High had for her to be able to go out here and make the bread because she was looking to live by the white man's bread and not live by God's word. And that, again, is the greatest irony of your black woman as related to good times, is while your Florida had that picture of white Jesus on the wall, she had no faith in the Most High God. And in one episode where you had JJ, who had the painting of the black Jesus, that's where we saw where there was where your Florida's faith was practically shattered. As when they took the white God away from her, that's when we saw that she had no real faith in the Most High, because anyone who has read the Bible knows that the Most High is not a man, and because he is not a man, he has us living by his word. So when I looked at that episode of Good Times and I looked at that meme, I just thought about it. I said, yes, she was filled with fear. And it's, again, that culture of fear that has undermined the black community for over 50 years. And it is that culture of fear that black Americans, we all have to face. And we have to ask the sisters out here to start really taking a look at themselves and start looking at the fears that they have, because it's those fears that keep our sisters from actualizing their potential as black women. Many black women wonder why they are single, and the reason why they are single, again, is because they are outside of the order of God, and they're outside of the order of God because they are afraid to trust in the Most High, and because they're afraid to trust in the Most High, they're sitting there afraid to step out when God gives them a man, when God gives them opportunities. They are afraid to go out here and take that next step because they're looking for the security of a white man and not looking for the security of God, who is not a man. Because they are so scared, this is why they sit there spiritually unfulfilled, mentally inability to actualize their potential in spite of all of their degrees. They don't never learn, they never grow, and they never move forward because they're always like Lot's wife, looking back. And because they look back, that's how they become pillars of salt that wind up becoming on the ground of the ghetto. So instead of them being able to go out here and be able to be that helpmeet to a man, they wind up again looking back at that white man and become that pillar of salt. And that pillar of salt has no value because it winds up getting trampled under the ground, because that salt does not season the man, because a salt that seasons a man helps him, inspires him, builds his character up, and helps him be able to persevere. So this is the kind of salt that gets trampled on the ground because your black woman has learned how to be afraid, but there's nothing to be afraid of all but fear itself. And again, there's no reason to be afraid because God has already given the black woman the victory, but all she has to do is take the steps to go out here and win. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream, and I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. And I'm asking everybody to go out here and pick up the books of the 2021 catalog: John Haynes, Taking Care of Business, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, and E-Steam Cancelification. You find these books on Amazon.com, along with Stop Simping and Cyberspace. All of these are great, positive, inspiring, and uplifting books that feature black characters. And you can find all of those books on Amazon, along with the book Spinsterella, the Goth and Lovely Romance, where I go over the whole concept of facing your fear and finding great love that is out here. So you can get Spinsterella on Amazon in paperback, and it's a great book that will show you how to overcome fear and how to face fear and go out here and have the great life that God has for you. Now, if you also want to go out here and help out the channel, you can donate to the Cash App by clicking the link in the chat, or again, buying some of the books on the SJS Direct imprint. All of these books are again available in paperback and Kindle format. can buy all those books in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on digital and Smashware as the iBookstore and Google Play. I want to again thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. We had 42 in the chat. We have 33 likes, so let's get the likes up before I get ready to go. This was a stream I really enjoyed doing, and I'm hoping you guys will get the likes up because it really helps out the channel. And I'm also hoping you guys will head over to Amazon and pick up these books because I'm working hard for some weekend book sales, and I can only continue to reach out and get new readers and get more books out there with your support of picking up the books that are currently on the SJS Direct imprint. So I want to thank everybody again for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream. Have a great weekend and have a great night.